4 different types of stool options here for the legs, and you get to choose one. The one I'm going to work on today is this one. And this will give you the general design. And I'll teach you where to go from here. Let's get us a cut list. Alright, first thing we're going to do is measure for the width. And here I have 8.5 for the width. And 8 3/4 for the height down here. So I'm going to write those down, and I'm going to need 2 of those. I'm going to write that as legs 8 1/2 by 8 3/4. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the top. The top on this particular one, I like to have it be the same as the width of the legs at the bottom. You'll notice it's tapered here. It's going to be about 7 inches at the top, 8 3/4 or 8.5 at the bottom. So the top will be 8.5 wide, and then the length, I like to put it somewhere around 12 to 13 inches. So I'm going to do 13 for this one. So 8.5 width again by 13 inches long, and I just need 1 of those. The last thing that we need is a skirt that's going to connect the 2 legs together. So that skirt will be, we're going to want 3/4 inch overlap from there to there, off of our legs, 3/4 overlap, plus 3/4 inch material. So each side is going to have 1.5 inches smaller than the 13 inches. So in total, we're going to take off 3 inches from the length of our top. So we will have width will be, the width on it, I'd say 2 inches is probably sufficient. Maybe 2.5 would look better. So we'll do 2.5 by 10. So there you have it. We have our legs 8.5 wide by 8 3/4 long. The top is going to be 8.5 by 13, so 8.5 wide, 13 inches long. And the skirt will be about 2.5 inches by 10 inches, and we need 2 of those. And there's a little sketch I gave you. Actually, before we start building, I want to take note of this. As you can tell, the width of both the legs and the top are the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up the 8 3/4, the 2 of those, plus the 13, 1 of those, and I'm going to get a full number length so that I can cut the legs and the top out of the same material. So 8 3/4 plus 8 3/4 is 17.5 plus 13, so then that's 30.5. But we also have to take into account that we have soccer, so let's make sure to do a little extra. So I'm going to cut my board to 31 inches, and then we should have enough material. I have all my materials here. I'm going to start ripping it on the bandsaw. Here we go. 8.5. Okay, now we're back at the track saw, crosscut saw, and we're going to be cutting the legs to length and the top to length. So I'm going to start with the top because it's the longer cut in case I screw it up, and then it can become a leg. So starting with 13 inches, and then I'll cut my 2 at 8 3/4. So 13 inches. And 2 legs, 8 3/4. There we go. Now we can trace this onto there. Actually, before we trace that, let's go ahead and cut our skirt material. As noted here, the offcut from your bandsaw cut will be great for the skirt material. Alright guys, time for me to show you a little trick. So, these are angle cuts here. They're not going to be done on the bandsaw. Some of you guys might think, I'll go over the bandsaw and freehand it. Now that's one idea. However, this thing cuts really straight lines. So what I'm going to do is line up the plastic here, right on that line, and that'll give us a nice straight cut. Do it on this side and then that side. It'll go nice and quick. Show you what we got. Alright, so here we are now at the scroll saw, which is the best way to cut this shape out. I'll show you how that's done in fast motion. Don't forget your safety equipment. Alright, so as you're cutting this, you'll notice on the piece that I chose, there is a peak that's got a pretty sharp angle on it. What's best to do is to cut the majority of the material out with a soft curve and then come back and do that nice sharp looking peak. That's what I found to be the most helpful. Hope that works for you. Alright everybody, so we have our two skirt pieces, nice and milled up. They still do have some rough edges, so we're going to take care of those with the jack plane and the sander. And we have our two legs, alright, and again, spindle sander for the inside here. We'll be hitting that. And we have our top. So the things that we need to do, sanding is number one on all those things. But also, if you want to put any kind of detail on the top of your seat, now would be the time. And for the detail on this, I'm going to go ahead and use the router table and put a chamfer on it. Some might choose a round over, some might even put an OG on there, I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and do the chamfer on this. I'll show you that on the router table real quick. And then the next thing I'll show you is how to put Craig jig screws into your skirt pieces so that they can both line up into the legs, because they'll be coming into the legs, something like that. And so we're going to want to pocket screw the back side into there, and then we're also going to be pocket screwing up into the top. So we'll need to have pocket screws going up, 1, 2 that way, and 2 this way. So I'll show you that next. Alright, here we are at the Craig jig. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure on this piece, I want to stay away from this knot with any screws because it could break out. So I'm going to actually have this on the face and this on the back side, which is a nice clean surface. So you're going to want to put whatever is going to go to the inside of your table down on the table of the Craig jig. So for the end ones, you're going to want to go to about 1.25 inches. If you have 2.5 inch wide pieces, that's centered there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. 1.25 inches, you'll see is there. If you get to the Craig jig, go ahead and ask Mr. Coop or whoever your teacher is for some help getting it set up, making sure that it's all dialed in right, because you could be drilling too deep. Could be not drilling deep enough. There's a lot of things that could happen if this fence isn't set right, the depth of the drill bit's not set right, or the clamp mechanism not set right. So just check in if you have any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these two. Alright, so we got our 2 centered holes, and I'm going to do 2 towards the edge. Maybe like 2.5 inches. So all in all, your piece will look kind of like Swiss cheese. However, it's going to be a lot of support with mechanical fasteners, and you'll also apply glue to make sure that it works well. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do that to the next one as well. So now I'm going to take my top and I'm going to run it through the router table. We want to make sure to do the end grain first and then go to the edges. So here we go. Okay, parts to the stool. Gonna lay it out there. They are not screwed or glued together, but this is how it will go. So the way I like to do it first is to glue and screw the skirts to the legs, and then glue and screw the skirt down to the stool top. So let's start with the legs. Okay, so I thought my video was running, but it wasn't. I already got started on the first two. You can see my pocket screws in there, and I have some glue as well. You see, I like to leave it a little bit less than flush, a little inset right at the top, and then it will of course get bigger as it goes down the taper if you flush it up with the top. So that's what it looks like on either side. Now we're going to go ahead and apply that to the other set of legs. And the critical thing is that you make sure it's all flush along the top. So I'm using my finger there to guide me, make sure I'm so I just feel there that's flush. Got my reveal, put some pressure down on it and sink the screw. Alright, so there's the basic concept. Now it's time to put our top on. Alright, for the top, you want to make sure that you're equal reveal everywhere. There, here, other side. So, once you get that measured out,